Welcome back, everybody, to Literature in Robes with your host, Jared. I'm here today to suck your blood. I'm sorry, I'm trying. That's not funny, I know. Today, we're going to talk about a trilogy by Jay Kristoff. It is the Empire of the Vampire Trilogy, which includes Empire of the Vampire, Empire of the Damned, and Empire of the Dawn. These are a variation of the American version of the book. These are printed in Great Britain, and so their covers are slightly different than the American versions. I could probably put up a little graphic here just to show you what the three look like. Now, I do have the three, well, I had the three American versions, but, you know, the death of books, the worst kind of death is water. Water everywhere. So my first editions of the American books were ruined. Water spilled on them. It was heartbreaking. Rather than stare at my books that had been ruined, I decided to pick them up and read them and make sure that I got that story in me before the pain of the loss of the quality of my books got to me too much. So
oh, poor baby.
Thankfully, I was already a huge fan of Jay Kristoff's, and I had found some beautiful, beautiful versions that I really wanted to have. So that's why I have these different covers. You'll probably see a lot of these on bookshelves in England, but in America, and there's some different versions too. The Barnes & Noble version is really gorgeous, the American cover, but it has like end papers, the art from the inside that have been done by the artist Bon Orthwick. So the books come with black and white artwork inside of them. It's no different in the British version, except the British version, they kind of frame the pictures, and in the American, the picture takes up the whole page. So it's kind of a nice little different thing. But yeah, what are the three stories about? Vampires, okay? We've got vampires everywhere, and even some of the heroes have qualities of such. Some of the heroes do not. Some of the heroes are plain human. Some of them have maybe some other qualities to them without... I don't want to make this a spoilery review, but just suffice to say, there are many different types of characters in here and different variations of those types as well. Not all are bad, not all are good. It does kind of bring in the classic Dracula vampire stuff and some of those like creatures from the darkness that lived in Transylvania, but it's a very classy type of story. It feels a lot like the Anne Rice vampire novels. The characters are very well fleshed out, very intense. Characters who become very close, some fall in love. Of course, it's a Jay Kristoff book, so there are amounts of sexual description in these books.
I like sex. It's nice.
No holds barred. I think a lot of women especially enjoy reading these scenes because, you know, let me just say, they're a little hot. When I think back to Kristoff's Nevernight trilogy, I almost felt like some of those sexual scenes were a bit too gratuitous. Sometimes I would roll my eyes because it's like, really, we got to do this again? But in these books, I didn't find myself going, all right, another sex scene or anything like that. So where it was needed, I think Kristoff put it there wisely. It was, you know, he's good at that stuff, but it's not for everybody to read, so just a fair warning. Another warning about these books is there are fucking fuck words fucking all over the balls place. So if you're not offended by language like that, then great. I mean, this is a book for you. But that's the Jay Kristoff style. He's kind of a rock star. If gratuitous use of language like that offends you, maybe these books aren't for you. I mean, there's also blood and vampire and all that kind of stuff going on. So these books aren't for the faint of heart or for somebody trying to look for a good, wholesome story.
Shut up!
These are not bedknobs and broomsticks. They might be read in your room in secret, depending on how old you are. But anyway, I digress. These books are crazy good. And I want to say that the first one, The Empire of the Damned, first of all, I mean, check these covers out. These covers are done by Kirby Rosales. These are really cool. These look so different. I really like that collage of many different things. You can see the different types of creatures, or there's angels and gods and all kinds of stuff. Religion is a presence, you know, good and evil. That's a very prevalent thing in this. Where does the line between good and evil get get crossed? Are good people allowed to do bad things in the name of something good, or are bad people allowed to do good things in the name of bad? The artwork in here, these are the English copies, so I'm trying to be very careful with this. It has a glued spine. It is not a Smithsonian binding. You got to be a little bit more careful not to spread the pages out, otherwise you may end up creasing the book. But there are cool little pictures in here. I hope you can see. Like every 30 40 pages there's a cool little piece of art. These have really cool like little chapter headers. These are just slightly different than the American version. Of course, I'm being the dork that I am. If you've been watching my channel, I love me some good old-fashioned autographed books right here. First edition, first printing.
Like, are y'all okay? Or
book one. This book was amazing, start to finish. I couldn't put it down. I think I finished it in like a week. These are chunky books, about 700 pages a piece, 750, somewhere in there. Gave it a 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5. This book was perfect. It caught me. I was a fish just waiting for that hook to drop back down in the water again. There just wasn't anything I could find wrong with it. His prose was just beautiful. Wonderful metaphor, wonderful simile. Just brilliant way of presenting just novel things or mundane things. Very flowing. It wasn't challenging, very fluid. It was almost poetic in its way. And it felt like I was reading something that was a little aged. Empire the Vampire, I could not recommend this book more. This is one of the best books I've read this year, up there in top territory. I just couldn't really find anything wrong with the Empire the Vampire. It's just freaking amazing. The Empire of the Damned, again, it's got that foiling and a glossy print on sort of a matte maroon color. Again, it's got that bordering and that lovely spine. Let's check out the boards, shall we? The chalice. This has meaning, but I'm not going to tell you what. You have to read. Ooh, and it's dark and it's good. So that introduces us more or less to a new character or a new vein of character. Did you hear what I did there?
You think this is funny?
This story differs a little bit from the first one, not necessarily in the telling. A person's being interrogated, the main character, Gabriel de Leon. The whole story is him telling the story about how he got there and how some things happened because everybody wanted to know, and I'm not going to give it away, but there's a big to-do about what's going on, and they need to figure out why. The story is told basically from a third-person limited point of view, which is the interrogator, but the story is told like in a real-time sense. So from chapter to chapter to chapter, it is just basically one long conversation, and it is punctuated as such. At first, it does get a little confusing, which kind of throws you off a little bit because you're like, wow, this person speaks very well. They're very attentive to plot and setting, and it's almost like they know exactly what they're going to say and set up the plots and everything. That storytelling style starts to fall off of you, and then once in a while when you're reading, you're abruptly brought back to it that this is a person telling a story because a question from the interrogator comes in. So it's a different way to tell a story, but I kind of enjoyed the narrative device of it, which really brings to the forefront that unreliable narrator that we so often come across in first-person point of view books.
You just can't trust anyone.
In Empire of the Damned, the story continues, but as you get to know some of these characters, some of the sidekicks or partners or people who join him on his journey are not all they're cracked up to be, and so we're introduced to some people. There's some family members that are brought into the mix that were assumed to be gone. There are some new characters that come in, and about a third of the way through this book, the narrator suddenly is left, and the interrogator vampire has to go and deal with something else. And so you're like, well, what's going to happen now? The story isn't finished. And you find out that you have to go and get a story from another character who is essential to the story. It was brought in the first book, but you find out there's another captive. Oh my gosh. And so then you get these stories from two different people in this one book. It becomes kind of interesting because you're like,
okay, so does that mean there's a third person or a second? What's going to happen?
By no means does it make the story less readable, because the narrators are good at telling stories, but he makes it pretty distinct between the two narrators. It can throw you off a little bit, and that's the only kind of spoilery thing I would say there, but it doesn't affect the story in many ways because you're constantly wondering, well, what has been happening over on this side of things or that side of things? How can we know what is actually going on? Because there's a central character in all these books that everybody is trying to acquire, abscond, steal, take them, protect them, or use them. It's not real clear about who or what they are until you get to later in the story. I don't think that's too spoilery to say. I really liked how the narrative device took another step up, and I really enjoyed the back and forth between the two different characters in both scenarios. And I really enjoyed the two main characters that were telling their stories as well. Very interesting and dark and mysterious characters. Are they telling the truth or not? Maybe they are. I don't know. But he depicts it so well that, you definitely have an idea of how well these characters either like each other or they don't through all the interactions they have. It gets pretty gruesome. And wow, some pretty crazy things happen too. But yeah, here's another book that has some more artwork. Don't want to get too comfy with opening them up. Bon Orthwick did the artwork on these interior pieces. I mean, it's definitely a distinctive style, a lot of lines and whatnot with some soft characters. It's like the backgrounds versus the detail are very stark in contrast and whatnot. It's pretty cool stuff. And once again, I am a proud owner of a signed copy of Jay Kristoff. I thought his autograph would be a little more crazy than that. I'm like, that looks like an M and an O, B, or an F. I don't know. So, Empire the Dan. What did I score this one as? A 5 out of 5. We got two. Two of these, man. Or ma'am. Two, ma'am. Ma'am. We got 2 5 out of 5s.
Ooh la la.
Oh! I'm going to keep recommending this. Now, we are left at the end of the second story with a huge plot hanger, a huge cliff. Like, whoa, what's going on? It was extremely satisfying. But as you read these books, you start noting some patterns that come out through the story he's trying to tell. The pacing is great. There are several battles within the books along the way. And in some ways, it is sort of a boss battle-y type fight scenario thing, but there's a lot more underneath the surface, so it doesn't feel like that, kind of like it did in, say, Never Die by Rob J. Hayes or the Sam Sykes Grave of Empires. And in this book, The Empire of the Dawn, once again, cover art by Kirby Rosanes. And again, you can see sort of the whole whatnot going on. Now, this third book for me wasn't quite the banger that I thought the first two were. The story starts getting a little more crazy. Some really freaking great things happen. But there's a moment here where I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? He keeps it all together. And I do understand that Kristoff did have some challenges trying to wrap up this third book. He wasn't quite sure how he would go about it. It felt like he was dangerously kind of walking along this tropey little line where some of the things that were happening just seemed almost too good to be true. Too much of plot conveniences that were going on. There were just some things that, I felt like he could have executed a little better, despite me knowing that that was the direction he needed to go in order for the story to continue and advance at a meaningful clip. The pacing on this one did kind of suffer a little bit, but I still got the story I wanted. I still didn't feel like putting it down at any point. The prose was still magnificent, but I think Kristoff got, I don't know what the best word would be for it, but I think he got a little comfortable maybe in some of that storytelling mode. This moves a lot of ground in this last book too. It was hard to kind of keep track of how much time was passing. The character arcs are shored up nicely. What we predicted probably would happen to the main characters did for the most part in these books too, but I felt like by the end of the Empire of the Dawn, perhaps Jay Kristoff was getting maybe a little bit tired, maybe ready to get this over with. And yet once more, the autograph. Jay Kristoff. And what's nice about these books too is they all have the same paper. The American versions, they went and did some weird stuff with some of those papers. This one, Bon Orthwick did some of the artwork, but it was also supplemented by Gonzalo Mendeveri. I don't know. Gonzalo Mendeveri. So some of the artwork in the final book here is slightly different, but the totality of everything, stylistically, it matches. Yeah. and some other characters. You had Silver Saints and vampires and all the people. In the end, Empire of the Dawn, I really enjoyed these guys. They were well worth the read. It took me almost a month to get through all three of them because, again, they were about 700 pages each. But the story was just filled with all the stuff that you'd want. That dark, just bestial monstrosities, the vampires. The world was bleak and hopeless. The writing was exceptional. The plot was probably my least favorite of it by the end of the third book. Probably could have shortened up the ending. I felt like just the last book kind of dragged it a little bit. Don't let that keep you from reading this because the story on the whole is great. There's just a couple moments, and it could be because I'd been reading the same story, boom, 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 that, you know, you recognize certain passages, certain things that the writer needs to remind people of when you get that book to book to book type reading stuff, which I really wanted to do, but it has kind of that drawback for me. I'm cognizant of that. Eventually, people are going to start reading it along the way. They'll need that kind of expositional stuff to come in. So Empire of the Dawn, I gave a 4.5 out of 5 robes. Again, 4.5 is a great score. I couldn't knock it much more of that. I just felt like there were some pacing issues, character moments where I was like, okay, what's going on? But all the characters had plenty established in the prior books as well. So it wasn't really a problem. I just felt like maybe he wasn't taking advantage of it as much as he could have. But again, you know, he wrote like 2,200 pages here. So I don't know how many words that is, but it's a lot. So anyway, on the whole, the Empire the Vampire Trilogy, I think it's a 4.8 out of 5 robes. Pretty spectacular stuff. I do highly recommend it. If you like vampire books that aren't all about love and whatnot, there's sex, there's plenty of bad language, there's plenty of blood, drugs, sex, and rock and roll, man. That's just what this is. I mean, that's Jay Kristoff, baby. He's the man. He's like King of Darkness at this point. But I love it. I can't wait to see what he comes up with next. Should be very interesting. Should be very dark. Jay Kristoff, love you, man. Congrats on getting another trilogy under your wing. I can't wait to see what happens next. Have you read these books? If you read Kristoff, I don't know how you felt about it. Are my opinions suitable for books 1, 2, and 3? Let me know in the comments, okay? If you like what we're doing here on the channel, like, subscribe, the bell, bling, 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 and always remember to keep reading. This ain't your George R.R. This ain't your George R.R. Tolkien. Or, not George R.R. Tolkien. Bye!